Hey guys, Erlay here. So today I have a very special guest here. Her name is Marilyn Gomez. She's a friend of mine over on the Instagram world. She is a certified life coach, an astrologer, and also a Reiki practitioner. So good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
So, a lot of people who watch my videos have struggled with chronic illness, and I know that you are also very familiar with that, realm of things too. So, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about your story and kind of what got you to where you are now.
Absolutely. Well, I have a couple years in the chronic illness world. I was so for me, my journey started when I was 9 years old. So about 30 years. I'll be 40 this
Oh,
weekend.
wow.
On the new moon is my birthday.
Well, happy
So
almost birthday. You
thank
don't
you.
look it.
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, at 9 years old, randomly I woke up one morning and I couldn't move my knee. I went to bed as a normal kid, and then throughout the night I started to feel like when we're flaring up and we have that, you feel the inflammation and you can't bend something. I felt that for the very first time, and it was I want to say it was my right knee. Yes, it was in my right knee. And we go to shift in the middle of the night and you pick your knee up without even thinking about it as you're like in that fetal position. And I just could
Yeah.
not do that. And from that moment, my world was rocked. It was turned upside down. I remember us like heading off to the emergency room, and because they couldn't even put any pressure on it, I couldn't stand up on it at all. And it was just night and day. And this kickstarted a 2-year journey of going without a diagnosis. And from that point, it just really started to go everywhere. I think from the fear alone that was taking over of not knowing what's going on, being so young, watching my mom and just really like just not know anything and just really upset. She was angry, she was scared, she was all of the emotions, fear, the lack of direction or insight as to what was happening really weighed heavily on her. So I was watching all of that too. So I feel for around 2 years while we were trying to figure things out, I was really bad. And I went right into the wheelchair for the first time. It moved from one knee to the next knee, and then it was one ankle to the next. So as we know, like with rheumatoid arthritis, not everybody, but in especially severe cases, it starts to move and hit both sides of the body.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what it did for me. And it went head to toe. And what put me in the wheelchair, though, was the hip. When my hip locked, I could not stand up. I just couldn't stand up at all. I couldn't put any pressure or anything on it. It makes me want to grab my hip now. It was excruciating.
Yeah.
So
Imagine.
I absolutely relate. I feel like this is what's brought me to this alternative healing modalities today, but it's been a lot of trial and error in between for sure, to really figure out what works for me, and what doesn't, and then how I had been blocking or prolonging my suffering for a good length of that time for sure. But yeah, it was 9 years old.
Wow. I
Yeah.
can't imagine how scary of a journey that is. I worked with a lot of kiddos in the pediatric realm, so they would come in as young as 9, 12. I've even seen some infants, and
Right.
it's just, you guys are going through a lot, and then the parents, I'm sure, also feeling it too, because it's like,
Yes, when they're watching, just you're watching your child's like, not only are they scared, but me being pulled out of school. Like I actually liked school, but I couldn't go. I couldn't. They had to figure out what was going on, and then having to stay home with the tutor, like, and it was an up and down cycle. I wasn't just in my wheelchair. Like on the days I felt good, maybe I have a cane, or maybe it was nothing. So it was just kind of like this, it's serious trials and tribulations, like up the mountain, down the mountain. This medication would work for a little bit of time, and then it just stopped working. And going through your childhood years like that, it's hard. It's really hard, especially with side effects. There's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about the side effects that medications bring,
Right.
especially when you need those. When you, especially in the beginning, you feel like you need everything that the doctor's telling you. You're trying everything, to get control of what's happening. And yeah, really scary. So I absolutely relate what parents are dealing with, especially the testing. I think
Oh, yeah.
bone marrow aspirations were the most excruciating, like they stand out the most in my mind. They thought, so for a while they thought I had leukemia. They were looking for cancer, and so they start to test in those areas. And so bone marrow aspirations, wow, like pain I had never felt before. Well, and then my mom having, you can't be asleep during those, so you're holding your child down
Yeah.
to get these answers, to find some answers. So yeah, it's devastating. That in itself, just the journey of having a chronic illness is trauma. That is
Yeah.
trauma.
Absolutely. So with you being exposed to all this at a young age, and I also like what you said before, you were also noticing, how your family and how your mom was responding to all this stuff on top of you, what was like the first thing that you found that started to kind of shift things for you?
So it took me a very long time, honestly. It wasn't until because I tried to push against the grain. And in those moments I was feeling good, I was trying to be really normal with cute shoes and everything, like trying to just be as super normal as I can be. I wasn't sharing my story at all. I
Mhm.
wasn't, like, a few close friends absolutely knew I had arthritis. They would even go with me to the gold infusions I would have to do weekly, and things like that as I was going through my teen years. But it took me a really long time. I would say it was when the universe smacked me in the face and said, look, you have run your body down into the ground. And so now you need some major surgeries. You need some major surgeries. And so around, and this is my Chiron, this is so interesting. At the age of 23, I was labeled physically disabled. I needed major surgery, and it was going to be like a 2-year process. I could barely walk at that time. I remember I would put on that brave face, I'm really strong. I think anybody with a chronic illness, you have some inner strength like no other, so
Yeah,
just remaining.
definitely.
I put on the brave face and I would show up every day because I'm consistent like that, but I could barely walk at that time. So I was trying to hold a full-time job and um, be the boss, and my body wasn't liking it at all. I wasn't supporting my health all the way around. I wasn't even tuning into my mindset, my emotional wellness, nothing. I was trying to get through, just survive. I was in that survival mode to take care of myself too. And I was living on my own at that time. So I was trying to really just survive and get through it. So when the universe smacked me in the face and says, look, Marilyn, you're not listening. You're not doing this on your own. You're not taking control of what you need to be doing. So I'm going to sit you down myself. So 2 years, I don't know the fancy name. You might know it beyond, well, they break all your toes and they reset all the bones. And
Oh, I know what you're talking about,
yes.
but I don't know the fancy name for it.
Okay, so I
I've
had
seen
that
it.
fancy surgery. So they did one leg at a time. They started with my left. So all of the toes, they had to reset the bones in my feet, including my ankle. My ankle was starting to roll out. So I was really walking on the edge of my foot. Like I said, I was like in excruciating pain. Every step I would take, it felt like I was walking on rocks. And that's like the bone to bone, the bone to the ground. It really, woo, man, I remember. And so, yeah, resetting the bones one leg at a time. I say one of the surgeries took about almost a whole year because I had to be able to put pressure on that leg again before we can move to the next. So I would at least have one leg that was working at one time. And this is where my life started to change because I had no choice. I had all the time too in the world to see how I wasn't supporting myself before, how I was really just trying to push through so much pain, but at a disservice to my body and my long-term health. And I found meditation during that time. Like, that's my godsend. The pain from the surgery alone was excruciating. That was mind-blowing. And they had told me then I'd probably have to repeat that surgery in 10 years just because of, but I haven't, and it's been nearly 20. So this is what the shift has been for me. So because I finally started to slow down and listen, I started to take care of my mind and my emotional body, for sure, my energetic body. But it was really yoga and meditation that was my entry point into alternative healing modalities. And then from there, I also, because of those surgeries, I did not want to take the endless amounts of prescription pain pills they wanted to give me. And this is where I tuned into the cannabis industry. And my mom actually she's seen how much I was suffering, trying to, like, I was projectile vomiting with a lot of these medications. And this was supposed to be helping me. My leg was throbbing. I'm so hot, sweaty mess. I was a mess trying to recover. And so this is when I turned to the cannabis industry. And we here in California, we were one of the first to pass the Compassionate Use Act in 1996. So the fact that I was even having to go down alleyways to Oakland, find a doctor, to get something that was a little more natural was crazy to me. It was something so outside of my comfort zone. But this is also what has led me here. Like, I feel that was another entry point into alternative medicine. I was able to slowly start to volunteer for this industry, or the cannabis industry, and support patients who are like me, people who are exactly like me, suffering in some way, or dealing with chronic pain or autoimmune diseases, all of the above, so many different ailments that I watched this powerful plant seriously help some serious medical conditions too. And this started to build my confidence into sharing my story. It started to open me up. Like, there was no reason I needed to hold on to everything I've experienced when this person sitting in front of me can use a little, like, it's going to be okay. I've been where you've been, it does get better. It can be better, so that makes me want to cry right there. Like, it was just it's beautiful to be here now.
Very powerful. I mean, seriously, to be able to go through all of those things, at such a young age. And, one of the things that I really resonated with is, for me, I also ended up hitting like a rock, so to speak. And I feel like that's a theme that I've noticed with a lot of other people who have struggled with chronic illness, and they try to push themselves in this one track when their healing actually might look a little bit different. And to see how, it just seemed like just one little thing at a time, just one little shift at a time.
Yes.
And it just started to open you up. And I love that. That's really beautiful, because that's honestly what I found was helpful for me, was other people sharing their stories. So I
think that is, so, like, especially being there when you're seeing people in their most vulnerable state, when they are in pain, when people are in pain, like, that's real. That is real. You're not going to get the fakery with somebody who's dealing with some pain, so it was just so empowering and inspiring to me to start to share more, to there was a reason why the universe set me down. There was a reason why I had been through all of the trials and tribulations I had already been at that point to serve in a different way, absolutely. So I think then my time, I was in the cannabis industry for over a decade. What I started to notice though is my business background started to take over. And so I was starting to work a lot again. And because it's cannabis, it wasn't, we're still trying to figure it out now. So,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
they kept moving us around. They kept rezoning. They wanted to put us in a new spot. And just the stress alone from those transitions was starting to weigh on me again. So here came my next big shift. And this started probably about, let me see, end of 2014 to 2015 was that next shift for me. And this is when I felt myself kind of pulling away from the mom I wanted to be, pulling away from the attention I needed to give my body, myself. So I had to find that balance again. We moved out of the Bay Area. I'm from the San Jose area. So we moved out of the Bay Area, a little on the outskirts, and I went back to school. I'm like, okay, this is where here comes the Reiki and here comes the astrology and all of that goodness. The tools that I'm able to use today started to flood in. So I went back to school just to, I was having success with the meditation. I was having success with the yoga. I felt great in my body. I even had children. I didn't have children when I had surgeries. And somewhere along that line, I started to feel really good. Something that the doctors also told me would never happen because I had it from such a young age. They didn't feel my body would support carrying a baby. And so just another no that I was able to crush. And they are just a huge reason, the biggest why I can think of why I keep going. And, and I know how important it is to share and be open. But yeah, so 2015, back to school, started taking those classes. This is where I started to get my coaching certification, my Reiki levels through Reiki Master came in. I wanted to learn. All of my friends were starting to dive into Reiki more and more, and how our energetic body plays a huge role in everything, in how we feel and how things are manifesting and all of it, where we're holding those old outdated stories and emotional patterns. Like we got to break free.
Definitely.
So yeah, so that is where the Reiki came in, and I found that another powerful tool for my tool belt. So, and then came the astrology. I had a mind-blowing astrology reading. And although I always loved astrology, I didn't know how deep it could be. I didn't know how many layers and how much information can be pulled from an astrology reading and a chart. And so that was my next. I feel like astrology is one of my final tool belts. I was so excited about it because it's such a powerful tool, and it's something I'm excited to share with my clients today because it's so eye-opening, as you know.
Yeah, it was definitely very eye-opening. It's interesting because I feel like, the general like awareness about astrology I didn't realize how limited it was.
Right.
Because like I thought I knew a lot, and I knew my sun, my moon, and my rising. And that I was like, okay, that's enough. That's more than what most people know. And then when you did did the reading for my birth chart, I was just like, oh my gosh. Like it validated a lot of stuff that like I intuitively was starting to pick up and resonate with, but it was very healing. And so I'm glad that you shared that, because one of the things that I've been learning from your story and from a lot of other people's stories too is that healing doesn't have to look a specific way.
Right.
And there's so many ways that healing can happen that like we can't even begin to imagine, especially when we're in like that like survival mode, like what you were talking about, or we're overwhelmed with all these other things that are going on in life that some of them may not really be aligned with who we are, or may not be, energetically good for us. And that was actually one of the reasons why I stopped on your profile on Instagram, because I'm like, I've never heard of astrology coaching. So I
Right.
think that that's really beautiful, just the journey that you've gone through with your entire life and how it's really become a blessing, not just for yourself, but for other people.
Definitely that I'm really tuning into my Chiron placement. So I know for me personally, Chiron, the wounded warrior, wounded healer in all of our charts, is an area where we all carry this great vulnerability, great sensitivity. Um, it's kind of like a wound that we will never be able to fully heal, but how we can slowly start to heal it or pay it forward, which feels like you're healing it. This is through service.
Yeah.
So for me, my Chiron is at my age 23, and that is when I went disabled. That was when my security, my stability that I was used to, that I had built this whole time, was ripped out from underneath me because of my chronic illness. So I know not only is like financial wellness is so important as part of our whole body wellness, understanding your money and your mindset, because that was just an extra layer of stress and trauma that I really had to figure out when I became physically disabled. And so, absolutely sharing that, guiding others and supporting them as they're starting their journey or they're figuring out what life looks like, or if I can save them time so they don't have to go through a lot of the stress and the progression that your body can start to show. uh it's really that's my calling here. I feel it, I know it, I'm sitting into it nicely these days, and just sharing it, just we learn so
Nice.
much from one another. It's a beautiful thing.
Very true. That's awesome. And that you actually touched on another thing too that I find so important too, is that how you were told by other people, because they did the best they could with what they have, but like, because this has been the way it's been, that you're not going to be able to do this, like having kids. That is
Yeah,
something that I've heard a lot of people be told with autoimmune, that they were
right.
told back in the day that they couldn't have kids.
Yeah,
So either they proved them wrong or they didn't do it. And it's just, it's amazing because where we are right now, we don't have to go with somebody else's plan. We don't have to go and sit here for like 30, plus more years
right.
going this one track when there's so many different possibilities. So I actually wanted to ask you, when if someone's just getting started, you know, especially if they're resonating with like the Reiki and the astrology stuff, like what you're doing, where would you recommend that they start?
I feel that so definitely, like we were talking earlier, it has to start with awareness. It really does. And that decision that you want to try something new, and then being open to it. Got to really be open to the process and just trusting in that process. Be open to learning. I think I had to develop that love of learning, and just know that what works for everybody doesn't work for, or what works for one person doesn't work for everybody.
Very
So
true.
just being able to go through those trial and error of what's really working for you, and recognize those, slowing down enough to sit in that awareness to know, okay, that felt good today, or that doesn't feel good, or this person is draining the bejesus out of me,
Yeah.
or like we got to really check ourselves. And our environment is huge, what we are doing on a day-to-day basis, and those that we allow in, and the thoughts that we allow to cross our mind. Like it really starts on that inner level. Once you got control of what's going on in your mindset and how you're feeling on a day-to-day emotionally, this is where you can start to add in daily practices, like of course like journaling. Like, even I started small, do 5 minutes of yoga every day just to stretch. I just did yoga actually for stretching. I think people can get a little intimidated when they hear the word yoga, but
Mhm.
honestly for me it was just stretching. I wanted to keep my muscles from the atrophy, from the surgeries I had. So that is how I used yoga. It was really to stretch, to keep that range of motion. We need that range of motion. Anyone with rheumatoid arthritis, for sure, you got to work that range of motion. But just start small. It's just small daily practices, thought monitoring, recognizing when something doesn't feel good in your body, even the foods that we eat, it's slowing it down enough to notice those triggering moments. I think that's huge.
I've definitely found that to be true for me too. Just like little daily things that I can do, like just a little bit every day. So whether I'm in a flare or my life is really busy, like, can I give myself like 3 minutes? Can I give myself like 5 minutes? And then as it started to become like it becomes a habit. So then it becomes automatic. So then you don't feel like you're putting as much energy into it. And then you just kind of stack up on that. Definitely.
Oh, and I think huge, this is big because it took me a really long time to pour in some grace. Give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Give yourself that downtime. Know that you do have a chronic illness. Know that you do have an autoimmune disorder. So just because this person's doing that, we can't compare. Comparisonitis, we gotta really mind check ourselves. So we're not comparing ourselves to others, our story, our journey. Those down days are needed. Those moments where, if you're not feeling good or you find yourself just pushing through just to push through, let that be your guide. Slow it down, to pour love back in, those self-care activities, things that bring you joy and peace, to recharge and then jump back in. I think that was, it took me a long time to learn that. I would push and drink coffee and let's just speed it up here because I'm not going fast enough. And I just operate in a different manner now. It's let's slow it down and let's align and let's slow it down a little more.
Definitely
and let's
more
rest.
chill.
Yeah.
But that's so true. Well, for anyone who is interested in working with you or learning more about you, where would you have them start?
Oh, yes. So I think astrology charts are a great place to start if you're looking for less of a commitment, because I do coaching as well. I have a 12-week coaching program. But if you're looking for less of a commitment and more answers to kickstart the bigger job that you're ready to do or the bigger works that you're ready to bring in, I think an astrology chart is a great way to go. It really identifies those stuck points. It can identify what you're meant to be, where you're meant to point your life towards, which direction. It just gives you ways to pour love back into yourself, brings in more peace and calm. There's just so much we can pull out of your astro chart. So I think that's a great way to start, for sure, on astro. And so MarilynGomezWellness.com, that is the website. I am also on social media platforms at M_G_wellness. I am in those areas too. So I dish out a lot of just health tips and tricks and mindset. Really, I focus a lot heavily on mindset and emotional wellness because I feel like that is the gateway. Our mind is definitely the gateway to what we're experiencing on a physical level. So for sure.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for being on here and sharing your story. It was super inspiring. Those astrology chart readings, if you are like on the fence about it, go for it. It is really, really helpful. Definitely. And I will include the links to all of these things on my YouTube channel so that way you guys can go and check it out. And it was nice to talk to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, my friend. It was nice to talk to you too.
All right. Well, everybody, you guys take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.